What made you lose respect for someone? Dishonesty. All the lies when none were required. When my sister quit talking to our mom and I for no reason. Didn't even have the guts to say anything. I lost respect and no longer speak with one of my sisters. About 2 years of marriage, her husband started to develop some symptoms where he became very clumsy or had trouble holding things. After some evaluation, it was determined he had ALS. She decided even though that he could live a full life right now, she didn't want to be married to an invalid, so she divorced him. My mother was rude to my son and this crossed a line. On my wedding anniversary, I posted some photos from our wedding on Facebook and Instagram with a cute caption about how much I love my husband. My mother-in-law saw that her daughter was partially cropped out of one photo, so she texted my husband that I did it on purpose. My Mill is obsessed with her kids having a good relationship. They're in their late 30s and early 40s, even, or maybe especially, at the expense of her son's marriage. I called her on it and she apologized, but things will never be right between us again. I lost all respect for her that day. When my friends started making jokes about suicide and cutting, I lose respect for anyone that lies and doesn't tell the truth. I don't know if I had respect for this uncle to begin with. My aunt passed away and I was in charge of everything. Called people, made arrangements, etc. This uncle was a black sheep, never was around for his own family, not even for Grammy's illness/death. Showed up at the wake and asked if he could call me about some stuff the next day. Mind you, he owed my aunt a few grand, that I knew about. He calls and asked about her TVs. She had a few, he knew about them as he had been around enough to borrow the money. I said, that's it, you want some of her stuff? I told him the only people entitled to anything from her estate were the people listed in the will as heirs, and you are not one of them. But I did go on to thank him for coming. So I'm not getting a TV? No, Uncle X, you are not. Have a good day. Treating service staff poorly is an immediate red flag. My former friend did an owner surrender, which is when you surrender your dog to the animal shelter. He had owned Dusty for 6 or 7 years. I loved Dusty, we played fetch together for many hours. So my former friend gets married and suddenly Dusty is gone. I ask, hey man, where's Dusty? He says to me, oh, I took him back to the shelter. I only got him so that meeting girls would be easier, but now that I'm married I don't really need him. Fuck you, Dale. Dusty deserved a better human. Passive-aggressive people, insecurities, living behind false realities, blatant manipulation, etc. I've had a handful of college instructors who fit many of those qualities and I learned to ignore them and do whatever the F I was going to do anyways. Some family members are so deep into religion that I can't take them seriously anymore. Masks are the sign of the beast. It's more sad than anything. Childhood friend and I grew up lower middle class. He now has a job that pays over $100,000 a year that he bullshitted his way into, and now acts like he's above anyone who has less money than him. You just made me cry, man. Not only does one of my grandmas think vaccines cause autism, but that it's worth it, so let kids die rather than risk them being autistic. She also says that the gays are ruining America. I'm an autistic lesbian. My first serious boyfriend. We dated for 2 years in HS, and he was an amazing guy, and probably the first person I ever learned to trust. Put up with so much shit from teenage me that I pretty much always felt like I owed him a little bit. When things didn't work out for us as a couple, we stayed friends. I mostly grew out of my toxicity, but as time passed, he seemed to get worse. Fell into depression, would get help every now and then, but it never stuck. For about the last 5 years, I saw him falling into some really scary incel/red pill/nice guy mentalities. I tried to help, I tried to listen and support him, give advice when he asked, which was often. Tried to repay some of that patience he showed me when I was a teen. It was exhausting, but hey, we've been friends for 15 years. It was worth trying. But it kept getting worse. Toward the end, much of my advice consisted of yes, women are also people, and have their own feelings/opinions that aren't about you. Finally, a few months ago, he said something along the lines of all the scared mask wearers should just go kill themselves already so the rest of us don't have to deal with their shit. As someone who had previously attempted suicide, I couldn't believe he would say that at all, least of all to me. That was the end of it. I sent him one last message to explain, and blocked. I still miss him, but I miss the person he was 10 years ago. I can't respect the person he is today. Was helping a new teacher adjust to our school. We were hanging out with some friends who were military, and he mentioned being a champion hogger when he was in the military. All laughed except me. Instantly lost all respect for him. I still remain friendly, small community, etc., but it disgusted me. Hogging being finding the fattest woman you can find to have sex with. Never being able to admit that they were the one that fucked up their life. Insulting their spouse. Talking shit about someone behind their back. Domestic abuse. There's a lot of people in my life that hit 3 out of 4 of these boxes. A few that hit all 4. My God, I would live my life differently if I could go back to being 18. When someone can't accept me for who I am but expect me to accept them and who they are. Especially if they have expectations on me that are not attainable. Girl I liked and I were starting to get close, and one day I opened up to her about my struggle with depression. A few days later she blocked me, and when I asked why she said I was a depressed fuck and told me to go kill myself. Lost all respect I had for her then. Haven't seen a friend in a high school from another state in nearly 10 years. Me, my GF, and GFS friend were at Florida, and I told my HS friend we're at Florida and it'd be cool to get together and catch up from the HS times. I only knew she's at Florida from her Facebook info. She seemed excited and was down to meet up with us. She was only 20 minutes away from where we booked an Airbnb at, so it seemed like a no-brainer. Except every time it was time for her to come by or we visit, she never answers and flakes. By the time we left, the last message I sent her was, and she still hasn't answered. It'd be one thing if you weren't interested at the start, but to be interested and then flake, yeah, that annoyed me immensely. When I found out they had voted Liberal because they were probably going to win even though they are very conservative. Voting to be on the winning team is idiotic. Regardless of political leaning. Not as serious as the others in this thread, but I had 3 roommates in college and we were all really close friends. One of them started dating a guy that the rest of us thought was a huge loser, had a child on the way because he refused to use condoms, openly admitted to cheating on past girlfriends, etc., and desperately tried to convince her that he was bad news, but she wouldn't listen. She trusted a guy she'd known for less than 2 weeks over 3 people who were supposedly her best friends in college. She rarely spent time with us while she was dating him, and to some extent it felt like she'd only been friends with us as a placeholder until she found a boyfriend. When the relationship was over, she had the nerve to thank her hometown friends instead of us on social media for being honest with her about the reality of her relationship and helping her get over her ex. We stayed friends with her for a while after that, but it was never quite the same. When our friend group discovered this, now former, friend was a Holocaust denier. About 2 years ago around early December, I lost my closest female friend over an argument stemming from me having to cancel on meeting up one day. To be clear, the reason I had to cancel was not planned, as I was literally texted by my professor that I was late to a final exam I had. In that situation I rain checked, which I didn't think would be an issue, and raced over to my campus, which was 30 minutes away from me. Cancelling on our plans, which was literally just smoking a joint and going on a hike, seemed to cause her to snap and completely lose it on me. She said the craziest shit to me, like how I was an asshole, emotionally manipulative, use people, the lot. Before that day we never had been in a fight of any size, and she would often be the person I would go to for advice, and vice versa. Probably the most ironic part of this all was that she attended the same university as me, and knew damn well finals were happening, which to me seems like a fairly reasonable explanation for a rain check. As this dragged on to Christmas, she continued to lose her shit at me and demanded every little thing she had either lent or given me over the years of knowing, or else she would tell my parents that I smoke weed, a strange choice of blackmail since I'm in my 20s and my parents are obviously aware by now. Ultimately, it's safe to say I never saw her again, which is a bummer. But I'm not going to deal with that kind of drama for no reason, so I guess it was for the best.